Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Kupinis from B-Lab US and Canada. Thank you for joining us for Let's Get to Zero, a global update on the B Corp community's net zero by 2030 ambitions and the race to zero.
Hi, everybody. I'm Charla from B-Lab UK, and I cannot even begin to tell you how excited we all are for this hour together.
Absolutely. This is so awesome. And Shar and I feel so privileged to be able to co-chair the B Global Climate Task Force, along with an amazing group of colleagues representing B-Lab and Sistema Bay entities from around the world. And over the next hour, you're going to hear from all of these incredible leaders. So it's going to be an incredible hour together. And on behalf of the Climate Task Force and all of my B-Lab and Sistema Bay colleagues around the world, we want to welcome the over 750 leaders joining us on the webinar today from over 30 countries from all corners of the world. We are so thrilled that you're here, and we invite you to share where you're from and who you are in the chat if you haven't already. We're so grateful to all of you for your leadership and for the work that every one of you do every single day to use your business as a force for good. The purpose of today's call is to share with you all about this amazing global mobilization of B corporations in response to the climate emergency, including our bold ambitions and the over 700 B corporations that have already committed to net zero by 2030 and are part of the global race to zero. We hope you're going to leave today informed, energized, inspired, and ready to take concrete action, including committing to net zero by 2030 if you haven't already, and joining with your fellow B corporations in the B Corp Climate Collective to go further, faster together on the road to an equitable and regenerative future and a zero carbon economy. But before we begin, we would like to take a few minutes to acknowledge that every community owes its existence and its vitality to generations from around the world who have contributed their hopes, their dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought to a place against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life. That's true for my grandparents. And some have lived in place for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical, especially today, in building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin the event today by acknowledging and honoring the truth. I'm calling into this webinar from within the ancestral lands of the Ute, Cheyenne, Sioux, and Arapaho peoples. Further, I acknowledge that 48 contemporary tribal nations are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado where I live. I pay respects to their elders past and present. We invite you to consider the land on which you live and the confluence of legacies that brought you to be where you are. We invite you to share in the chat, if you're willing, the ancestral lands from which you're calling into this webinar and acknowledge the First Nations people of those lands. If you're not sure which ancestral lands you're on, you may be able to find out on one of the two websites listed on the bottom right of the slide. So a few little logistical housekeeping details for today's webinar. We will not be hosting Q&A, but we welcome your feedback. You can either put feedback into the chat window, or you can email us afterwards at climate@bcorporation.net. We'll also be hosting several live polls during the call today, and basically at the right moment, you'll be asked to complete the poll, and then we'll tally the results real time for all of you to see. So I'd also like to mention that this webinar is being recorded and it'll be shared with all of you afterwards. So in addition to hearing from the amazing members of the Climate Task Force, we're also thrilled to be joined by three incredible special guests. Gonzalo Muñoz, UN High-Level Champion for Climate Action, who is also a B-Lab Global Board Member, co-founder of Sistema Bay, and basically an all-around B Corp superhero. Christiana Figueres, founding partner of Global Optimism, and also a beloved Costa Rican diplomat and former executive secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC. And Paul Polman, co-founder of Imagine, former CEO of Unilever and a longtime B Corp champion. And now to share a little bit of context on this unique moment in time and in history is my amazing colleague, Charmaine Love.
Thank you so much, Kim, and thank you, everybody. I wanted to start this moment of context actually with a bit of a story. And it's the story of Iliad Kapoji. Now, Iliad amazed the world last year when he crossed the finish line of marathon in less than 2 hours. It's truly astonishing. And it is important to note, actually, that he did not do it alone. To achieve this, he had a team of elite athletes running in front of him, setting the pace that would help him hit the target and shielding him from the wind. The takeaway from this story for me is actually how amazing it is what we can accomplish and achieve as humans when we work together. Now, my friends, the world today really needs pace setters, businesses, cities, countries, and people to set the pace for others in this race to zero. Over the last 6 months, we have found ourselves facing a series of emergencies, from the pandemic to the deeply seated racial injustices to the climate emergency. And with all this turbulence in the world around us, what has become acutely clear is that on this miraculous planet that we all call home, we all breathe the same air. We are all interdependent. And we can see that people are waking up to this actually profound insight. And the young people are showing us the way, and you are rising and you are responding to their concerns. You are setting the pace. You are leaders, and the world has never needed your leadership more. Today, we are inviting every single one of you to go further and faster, both individually and together. We want you to commit to bold ambitions and to truly lean into and live what it means to be a B Corp. And as we develop and share solutions, we must always remember the devastating impacts of climate change are already being felt by many people on this planet, especially our most vulnerable. This is a huge moment, a moment to redefine, a moment to reset what the world can look like through a just and green recovery. Sir David Attenborough recently said that when it comes to climate change, we cannot be radical enough. And as B Corps and as a global B Corp community, we need to always be asking ourselves, are we being radical enough? You have all been innovative and resilient in the face of this global pandemic. And the world needs us to bring this attitude, this can-do innovation and focus to climate. All of our lives and the very survival of our species depends on it. So as we leap into this amazing content we have in store for you today, we want to take just a quick poll to see where you might be on the journey. So you should see a poll that's just popped up. And what you'll see on this poll are a series of options. And we'd really love you to think a little bit about where you see yourself on the journey. Are you there already? Have you already accomplished net zero and have a plan for your business? Are you committed to net zero by 2030? Are you committed to net zero between 2030 and 2050? Are you feeling like you're on your way? Maybe you've done a baseline assessment, but you haven't quite made it yet to that moment of committing to net zero. Or are you just getting started and excited to learn more? Or any other response that you might have. All right, I'm going to be excited to see these results as they come in. Oh, there we go, Kim. We can see the details. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of folks just getting started. Great. We have a lot of work to do together.
Excellent.
Like we have already 8% that have already accomplished net zero.
Yeah, hooray. Lots to learn for all of us, amongst everyone in this community. And I know there's definitely someone on this line who can really get us started and get us going even further, faster together. So it's my great pleasure to welcome our amazing friend and colleague, the champion, the high-level climate champion, Gonzalo, to join us. Welcome, Gonzalo.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Kim, and thanks for setting the room for such a fundamental moment for the B Corp movement. I would like to first celebrate and congratulate not only the team, but the whole community of B Corps from all around the world that's my tribe, right? You know that. But also I would like to mention part of what's been happening and what brought us here, also to set the conditions for what's next, right? Please let me explain that only 5 years ago, there was no role for the business sector to be an active contributor to the solutions that were required to such an important topic as the climate crisis. Even the contrary, 5 years ago, like before the Paris Agreement, there were mostly some business trying to lobby to defend their own interests. So we were definitely part of to connect the business sector with this process that is being led by the parties. 5 years ago, we somehow appeared in the room as actors that can deliver solutions. That we were a part of the definition of a group that is called the non-actors at the Paris Agreement, as those that can bring the required action for the fulfillment of the agreement, right? In that moment, not only, as I said, the global climate action agenda was defined, the high-level champions was started being named, but also the Marrakesh Partnership was defined as the only platform that connects the role of the business sector and the non-state actors with the process. So this situation where we're in, like wanting to be part of the solution, has only 5 years of history. Then 2 years ago at COP24, the parties spent like 2 weeks discussing what to do with the IPCC 1.5 report that Science launched in October 2018, saying and explaining very concretely that the best possible path that we have is towards those 1.5 degrees of increase of temperature at the end of the century. And in order to get there, we need to become net zero by 2050. So in October, only 2 years ago, October 2018, we had the information of the science. Do you know what happened during COP24? The parties discussed for 2 weeks what to do with that report. They decided whether to take note, acknowledge, or welcome the report. The decision was to just take note. So less than 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, that was the situation. We were in a situation where parties were not necessarily positioning science in the center. And of course, since Paris, there have been so many great big businesses as an active and fundamental part of the discussion, trying to bring the solutions. So for example, women business as one of the great coalitions, brilliant, but we needed a new combination. We needed to put the science in the center. So we decided to hack the system. We brought a lot of business leaders from all around the world, not necessarily needing to be in a consensus in order to decide that science has to be in the center. Business leaders, we can just decide to follow science. Last year, we started, the champions and the Global Climate Action Agenda, we put it together through mostly the 1.5 business pledge from the UN Global Compact. But we needed more than that. We needed unusual suspect. We needed companies from different regions of the world, from different sizes, from different industries. That's the main reason why the incorporation of the B Corp movement in the Marrakesh Partnership changed the game. That was something to be celebrated. We joined the biggest platform that is connecting the business sector with the process, bringing this incredible diversity that we have. All of the value that is embedded into the B Corp commitment. We had then the definition of setting our own 2030 target, because we not only understand the role of science, we understand the importance of committing, the importance of walking the talk, the importance of really leading this race to zero. We had an incredible moment at COP25 in Madrid last year where we showed the world that we were leading. And you know what happened? Many others started following. Just last week, we updated the numbers of this Climate Ambition Alliance that is bringing together everybody, businesses, financial institutions, regions, municipalities, and of course, many parties, 121 parties already committed to net zero by 2050 in that group. B Corp shine because we are committed to 2030. Last week with Nigel, we updated the number. We already have more than 1,100 companies from all around the world, again, with the net zero 2030 commitment of the B Corps in the center and being the biggest number in between those 1,100 companies from all around the world. The growth of that Climate Ambition Alliance means that we have more than 50% of the global GDP already committed to follow science. We have more than 1/3 of the global population committed to follow science, but it's still not enough. We have to do more. We are still, of course, as I said, SMEs from all around the world committed to follow the commitment of the big companies from all around the world. So last week, we launched the SMEs Climate Hub with a net zero by 2050 commitment. Great. We can therefore bring more actors from different regions of the world. Still, there's more leadership to be set. So this is the plan from now to COP26. All B Corps should be committed at least to be net zero by 2050. And half of them should be committed to 2030. That's part of the plan. You know why? Because if you are not at least committed to 2050, you're still part of the problem. And we cannot allow any B Corp of the world to be part of the problem. We all must be part of the solution. So if you're a B Corp or you're willing to behave as a B Corp, there are two options. At least you follow science, you're committed to 2050. If you want to be part of that energy in the center of the global commitments, then be committed for 2030. If we do that from now to Glasgow, 13 months, we will not only be leading by walking the talk. We are taking this challenge as personal, as we always do. But one important message that we're sending to the world is this bottom-up message, not only to our Standards Advisory Council, because at the end, it will mean that this will be a baseline for every B Corp to get, of course, certified, but also to the policymakers from all around the world to understand that net zero commitment must be basic. For if you don't commit to at least 2050, as I said, you're part of the problem. That is an imperative for the 21st century. And we know it, let's do it. So I want to stop there, celebrate that we are, as again, in the center of the energy that the world requires. And now I'm very proud to introduce two fantastic friends and amazing climate leaders, Christiana Figueres and Polman, two of the most prominent architects of the global climate agenda. Christiana, as a former executive secretary from the convention, leading the parties, and now with the global Optimism, leading society in so many ways. And Paul, that has been leading the business and financial sector, both walking the talk and making all of us run a race to zero. Thank you very much.
Hello, friends. I'm Christiana Figueres, and I don't need to tell you that the scientific community is of one mind when it warns us that in order to have a safe, stable, prosperous economy, we have no other option but to cut global greenhouse gases by 50% by 2030 over the next 10 years. Now, frankly, I am outraged about the fact that all of us have delayed action so long that we are now pressed into the very last minute of being able to stand up responsibly to address climate change. But I'm optimistic about the fact that every day I see more and more corporations understanding that this actually means business continuity, that this means business growth. Every day I see more and more corporations moving beyond shareholder primacy, the 50 years of Milton Friedman that we are coming up on, but we are now moving beyond the Friedman doctrine to understand that it is not only shareholders that need to benefit from corporate engagement, it is actually everyone. And we are really beginning to understand that this is about stakeholder benefits, all stakeholders, people, planet, and profit. And very often we speak about those three Ps, people, planet, and profit, But we actually forget that the combination of the three P's gives us the fourth P, performance. Never before, as during the COVID days, have we actually seen the market prove that those companies that are acting according to the balance of people, planet, and profit are overperforming beyond the performance of those companies that are still only looking at profit. The fact is that popular expectation has changed. Citizens now expect both governments and corporations to actively engage and be solution providers, not to only make profits. And it is those companies that are actively providing social and environmental solutions are the ones that are being rewarded by the market. Now, I actually don't need to tell you all this because there is no community that understands this better than the B corporations. You are definitely, when it comes to reducing emissions and climate responsibility, basically you are fish that is taking to known waters. You are not swimming in unknown waters here. Purpose-driven companies are what you all are and what you've all committed to and what actually makes you the companies that you are. So in that context, I would like to thank those corporations that have already taken on the net zero commitment and encourage all others to seriously consider this and join the fold of the growing number of corporations that are taking the net zero commitment. Please let's understand that this is no longer a responsibility of altruism, but actually this is in all of our best interest. Carbon constraint has to be understood to be the birthplace of innovation and corporate efficiency. So with that, I would like to thank you for everything that you've done. Let you know that I'm very much looking forward to learning of more B-Corps that join this. And let's remember that in taking on the net zero commitment, you're actually just staying one step ahead of customer expectation.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Polman, the founder of Imagine. My vision for the future is simple. Imagine a world without poverty and hunger, with equal access for all to basic rights like education, food, digital services. A world that is peaceful, just, and inclusive, where everybody can develop to their fullest potential. A world that is in sync with our planetary boundaries, where we can breathe the air and enjoy the forests and drink the water. A world where business is seen as a force for good, not a cause of many of the problems. Where less bad or greenwashing has been replaced by truly net positive business models. Where the focus is on optimizing return for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. Where business thrives because they simply make this a better world. They have a truly net positive impact. Now, why is there an urgency to act now? Today, we're undeniably facing a series of emergencies, and they're all connected, as COVID has shown. Climate, biodiversity, human health, inequality, the economy. We're starting to understand that we cannot have healthy people on an unhealthy planet. Climate change and inequality are the biggest existential threats to us all, and yes, closely related. We have the solutions to address it, but it requires leaders to dig deeper than they ever have before to take meaningful action. Ultimately, it's our collective consciousness that will drive change, and we will be able to do so much the better for it. Currently, we are way off track on limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. WWF just reminded us that we've seen a fall of 68% of wildlife over the past 50 years, 94% in Latin America. When is it our turn? We're seeing daily reminders of floods, fires, and droughts hammering the poor. We risk being close to negative tipping points if we don't act faster. Now, many businesses are moving and the financial market is getting interested as well. They are discovering not only the moral case, but more importantly, the economic case. Just as gender-balanced organizations perform better, so do companies that actively internalize the climate change challenges. The Climate Ambition Alliance has now a membership of over 50% of the world GDP. The race to zero is on, and the Net Zero Asset Alliance is growing. Technology, cost savings, risk mitigation, employee and customer demands are galvanizing those enlightened companies into action. They realize that greening the economy is making them more resilient and creating equally more and better jobs for all. We know governments can't do this alone, especially when global governance is failing. We're grateful to some, like the European Green Deal and the new 55% reduction commitment. But although governments are key to set direction and framework, they cannot achieve the ambitious targets without business, nor can business achieve them without governments. The B Corp movement has made a major step by committing to net zero 2030 and encouraging for others now to do the same. One of the many great things about the B Corp movement is the sense of community that they have for each other. Together, it makes the movement an incredible force for good, and together, it can make the most extraordinary things happening. Setting a net zero 2030 target is showing the world that the B Corp companies have the courage, creativity, and conviction to take the necessary actions, to lead together as a coalition and as a collection of the willing. Congratulations to those of you that have already made this bold and brave commitment. And I hope that many of you that are considering it will take the plunge, knowing that you are not alone. This is a community that is known for a willingness to take on big challenges and to work together to show how true collaboration works in practice, learning from each other, sharing, being the change you want to see in the world. The road ahead won't be easy, but that shouldn't stop us. It will involve deep communication with your employees, your customers, and supply chain partners, and reviewing your operations, finances, business models, and strategy. In some cases, it will even require weighing the cost against rewarding other stakeholders. There are going to be choices to be made. Changes doesn't stop with the B Corps alone. Today is about the B Corp community, but make no mistake, your leadership will be showing the way for many others to follow. Your actions will be a guiding light that business around the world will follow. You are my heroes. You are mission-driven, purpose-led, and a special breed of conscious leaders. We need more of you, and so does the world. I'm looking forward to learning from you all on this adventure and celebrating together as a community of leaders in Glasgow at the COP26. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, I'm Manuel Conejeros from Sistema International. As most of you know, at the UN COP25 in Madrid last December, 533 B Corps from 33 countries committed to net zero by 2030 for scopes 1 and 2, and most relevant scopes 3 emissions. It was the largest, most aggressive climate commitment to date by a group of businesses, and 20 years ahead of the Paris Agreement 2050 targets. Today, there are over 700 B Corps publicly committed to net zero by 2030. As you've heard from our speakers, the B Corp community is in a unique position to lead within the business sector on climate. Together, the B Global Climate Task Force has set 3 goals, 3 bold ambitions for the community on the road to COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland in November 2021. These ambitions are guiding our work and strategy, and today you'll hear more about each of them. But in brief, and to get you warmed up, our first ambition is to redefine leadership. Leadership is about walking the talk. So we've committed to updating our B Corp standards to meet the level and scope of the climate emergency. We've made it public that we want to get at least half, meaning 1,700 B corporations of the global B Corp community committed to net zero by 2030, before COP26, and 100% committed to net zero no later than 2050. B Corps are not alone in this. all BLAB and Sistema B entities around the world are also committed to reaching net zero by 2030. Our second ambition is to drive climate action rooted in climate justice. This is about how we move to action, climate action, and how we ensure that this action is anchored in climate justice. To do this, we've launched the Global B Corp Climate Collective, which is powered by a vibrant and growing network of local and regional B Corp leaders and chapters. This is about helping you on the journey to net zero, supporting you to find each other, to share resources and tools, and to work together as a community. To guide this process, we've identified BLAB climate ambassadors in regions and plan to activate B Corp climate champions as well. Our third ambition is to partner widely. We know we can't do this work alone, which is why we're thrilled to be working on a range of partnerships that are allowing us to share and learn with the wider world. Today, you'll hear from one of our partners, Kaya Axelson from Oxford, as well as plans for a TEDx B Corp Countdown action parties. To help you understand Ambition 1 in a bit more detail, I'm pleased to introduce you to Dan Osaski, BLAB's Director of Standards and a member of the Climate Task Force, who's going to share more about the Net Zero 2030 commitment.
Thanks, Manu, and hello, everybody. The Net Zero 2030 commitment, as you've heard from a lot of our speakers, is designed to be pretty ambitious, but it's also at the same time designed to be accessible and achievable by all companies, including small to mid-sized businesses from around the world. The main thing that you need to know about this commitment, though, is that it does take real work. It's not an empty commitment. The credibility of our movement, this collective action, is built on those companies who make this commitment actually going about to achieve it. And so what I'd like to do is take a quick moment to provide a little bit more detail about what the commitment actually entails, so you're familiar with what this will actually take for everyone to get there within 2030. At the highest level, net zero means that you're achieving a balance between the greenhouse gas emissions that your company is producing and removing, and all within the time frame, as Gonzalo has highlighted, is being more ambitious than a lot of others, of 2030. This means that all company Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions are included as a part of this commitment. Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions are essentially what are all of the emissions that are produced by the operations of your business that you own or control, whether it's cars that your company has, cows that you own, or things like your utility bills and your electricity. This commitment goes beyond those Scope 1 and 2 emissions to also include what we define as the most relevant Scope 3 emissions. Scope 3 emissions are those types of emissions that exist in your broader value chain, whether it's the products that you're purchasing that go into what you sell, or even the potential usage of your products by your customers and your clients. This is where real ambition and real transformation and rethinking needs to occur, because Scope 3 emissions are actually the largest part of a company's overall impact. We've granted a little bit of flexibility in the definition of these Scope 3 emissions by including what we call those most relevant parts to allow for situations where certain emissions might not be calculated or might be immaterial. But importantly, Scope 3 matters because that's, again, where that transformation can really occur. In doing so, a company must reduce everything that they possibly can prior to engaging in offsets. And when offsets are necessary, we do require the consideration of what are credible offsets like gold standard certified offsets and what will be emerging offset products that are focused on carbon removals. Finally, you can't begin a net zero 2030 commitment in 2029. This all needs to begin now. And to really create accountability, all committed companies are required to report on their approach and their progress each year. And so for those of you who are already committed, I want to ask the question, what have you done so far? And are you preparing how to report on this? In the coming months, we're going to be engaging in some outreach to really create that accountability. And so please be prepared to make sure that you are leading this movement in the most credible way possible. And then finally, as Manu mentioned, we will, as a part of this overall process, continue to be rethinking what our certification requirements need to be to meet this moment. We'll be sharing some updates about that in the coming months as well. And with that, I'd now like to introduce my colleague from BLAB UK, Kate, to move beyond some of the fine print of these details and actually talk about some of the exciting stories that B Corps are doing to achieve the commitment.
Thanks, Dan. And it's really great to see so many people joining this call. As everyone's mentioned, B Corps are leading the way. You know, you're already redefining leadership. And what we just wanted to do is to bring some of this to life and showcase some of these incredible B Corps who are already making great strides towards net zero 2030 and beyond. And so in the UK, we have a company called Whole Grain Digital who've created a carbon calculator for websites. And that's to inspire and educate people to create a zero carbon internet. And they've also tried to incentivize all their employees with additional days leave or £200 to switch to renewable energy at home. Then in Spain, you've got Hololuz who are transforming energy production towards a distributed model by providing free solar panels. And their aim is doubling the amount of renewable energy produced in Spain. Another B Corp, through calculating their scope 3 emissions, actually recognise that the largest carbon impact is boiling the kettle for their tea, and that's pucker. And so they launched a public campaign to encourage their tea drinkers to only boil as much as they needed. And they've also been carbon neutral from crop to cup since 2019. The Dutch B Corp Dopper have also made, they make great water bottles, have moved to a fully circular model, and they've achieved cradle to cradle certification. Another similar B Corp is Beauty Kitchen, in the sense that they have worked towards having a circular process. So they've launched a return, refill and repeat program, which has been really successful. Innocent, who make smoothies and are all across Europe. I don't know if they've reached the US yet, but they've chosen to build a factory that's close to the port of Rotterdam, and that's to reduce the carbon emissions in their supply chain. And the factory that they're building is going to be carbon neutral as well. Now, the global publication, The Guardian, have changed their language to recognise the severity of the climate crisis. And so choosing the language of climate emergency, crisis or breakdown instead of global warming or climate change. And they've gone one step further, and they're also no longer accepting advertising from fossil fuel extractive companies. In Australia, we have Sendle, which is a carbon neutral shipper, and they're using wasted space on delivery trucks, which are created by so many next day deliveries. In the USA, you've got Allbirds, who've created a carbon fund, and that's a self-imposed carbon tax, which then funds the 100% carbon neutrality through their emission reduction programs. You've also got Dr. Bronner's and Patagonia, who have spearheaded the creation of a regenerative organic certified standard, recognizing the important role of sequestering carbon into the soil and ecological land management. And then finally, in Latin America, we've got Brazil, in Natura, and they've preserved 1.8 million hectares of Amazonian forest and supported 4,300 small farmers to develop sustainable business models that benefit them, as well as the world's largest tropical rainforest. And we know that there are literally hundreds and hundreds of stories like these, and I definitely haven't been able to cover as many of them that we have. But if you do have actually these stories and you think that we should know about them, do tell us, and whether that's reaching out to us on email or even just sending them in the chat, because we'd love to hear more of them. But really the point here is that we know many of you are already leading the way, and we want to create spaces for you to learn from each other. So before we get to the next section, I just want to do a quick poll and find out what's really the biggest barrier that you face in transitioning to a net zero business model. And this is a multiple choice. So whether it's lack of skills, knowledge or expertise, whether it's lack of financial or other resources, technology and or the options don't exist yet, or a lack of support from internal leadership, or it's all just really confusing and you don't know where to start, which we hear that. There's a lot to get your head around. So this is really interesting. So obviously you can all see the results as I do, but it looks like there's a close kind of tie between lack of skills, knowledge and expertise and lack of financial or other resources, but lack of skills, knowledge and expertise seems to be a key driver here, which is fascinating, and definitely something for us to think about how we encourage the sharing of skills and the lack of knowledge that exists, and ensure that we can help provide that as the community as well. So I just want to hand over now to Yeliz, our country partner manager from B-Lab Europe, to share an update on the B Corp Climate Collective.
Thank you, Kate, for sharing these inspirational stories, as well as guiding us to learn from the companies on the call today what they actually need so that the B Corp Climate Collective can be there for them. So let's talk a little bit about the B Corp Climate Collective now, whose reason for existence is to help multiplying similar actions that you just shared with us. I'm Yeliz Mert, everyone. I'm the member of Climate Task Force on behalf of Europe, together with my colleague Daniel Turan. The B Corp Climate Collective is a global and local network of climate leaders, and read here you, with over 1,500 active B Corp volunteers around the world. It's a community of trust, learning, and practice. It's focused on equipping B Corps and all other businesses for climate action, justice, and advocacy, and to accelerate our community's work to address the climate emergency, including getting to net zero by 2030. B Corp Climate Collective is organized through regional groups. We now have regional groups in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Europe, and the US and Canada, and with others emerging in numerous other regions. And ultimately, what we want is that to help bring these collectives come to life in all major B Corp markets throughout the world. Each regional climate collective organizes its own issue and impact-focused working groups independently. The working groups tackle specific climate challenges and opportunities, including action groups focusing on baselining, decarbonization and offsetting, climate policy advocacy, climate justice, regenerative models, employee engagement, sustainable packaging, and more. We're happy to know that many of you who are also in the call today shared with us your willingness to work with fellow B Corps to create pathways for resilient and regenerative economies, define the future of energy and transportation and materials, as well as fair food supply chains and preservation of nature. All that work is there for us to do. Check out B Corp Climate Collective for resources, which we will just share in the chat. And your fellow B Corps have been catalyzers to create and assemble these resources, and we want to create more through the regional hubs. Let's make sure the B Corp Climate Collective is a case study for how the business sector can live into the kind of radical, pro-competitive collaboration that's necessary to stabilize the biosphere and build a just, equitable, and regenerative economy. More to come. Now I want to move the word to my colleague, Dr. Elanda Williams. Part of the work of the Climate Collective is to ensure that all of our work is centered in climate justice. So she is our Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and we will hear more from her.
Morning. Thank you, Elise. In our race to zero and the quest for net zero by 2030, we talk about climate action and climate advocacy. And we get trapped in the false notion that it's just about decarbonization in the atmosphere. But climate change is profoundly unjust. It's rooted in both white supremacy and racism, and it's affecting people in far-reaching ways. Impact on the poor. When natural disasters strike, they hit poor communities the hardest and the fastest. Lack of capacity to deal with the effects. Climate change is having disproportionately negative effects on the most vulnerable countries, communities, and people. These are the least equipped individuals to deal with the impacts. Intergenerational effects. Younger generations will simply suffer these consequences more greatly than their parents and their grandparents. Gender disparity. Climate change is really sexist. In many countries, women serve as both providers and caretakers, but are more likely to die in natural disasters than men. Women are often simply left out of the conversation about adapting to climate change, even though they are sometimes in the best position to provide the solution. Climate justice links everything we are doing in addressing the climate emergency to human rights and development, taking a human-centered approach and placing people and equity at the core, recognizing that those who are least responsible for climate change are more likely to suffer its gravest consequences. As an organization, B Lab has made a firm commitment to justice and anti-racism. We have taken a stand against anti-Black racism and all forms of oppression, including transphobia, classism, sexism, xenophobia, and more. We've committed to a focused and sustained action to dismantle racist systems, practices, and ideologies within ourselves and then our networks. As we continue to learn about injustice, we embrace a radical reorientation of our consciousness, and we will listen to the voices of Black, Brown, Indigenous, and marginalized people to catalyze equitable outcomes for all. As a climate correspondent, Eric Holthus said, "The climate crisis is racist. The answer is anti-racism." As the source and cause of the vast majority of the planet's greenhouse gases, the business sector is uniquely culpable for the climate crisis, and therefore responsible for demonstrating leadership in eliminating emissions and drawing down carbon as rapidly as possible. In early 2020, the B Corp Climate Collective forged the Climate Justice Task Force. While early in its work, the task force is focused on centering all climate action and advocacy in climate justice and strengthening related literacy throughout the work of the climate, the collective, B Lab, Sistema Bay, and the global B Corp community. In addition to the aforementioned statements, we've also released a basic climate justice resource center that provides more information on this topic. Finally, I'm happy to share that the B Corp Climate Collective, in collaboration with Provoke, B Lab Global, the Skoll Center at Oxford University, and numerous climate justice experts are working together to develop a climate justice playbook for business to be released in late 2020. There is no climate change without climate justice, and justice simply can't be obtained in the same place that racism exists. We are on a learning journey individually and in community, and we invite you to join that journey and make the commitment to educate leaders and members of the community on anti-racist rhetoric, theories, and behaviors. Dismantle the aspects of racism embedded in your systems and policies. Decenter whiteness in our work and our analysis, and center justice in our goals, outcomes, and standards.
Thank you, Yolanda. Climate action and climate justice are just two of the themes outlined in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. My name is Laura Velez Villa, and I work on SDG program and partnerships at B Lab. The SDGs, as many of you know, are 17 objectives that we must meet by 2030. It's, as I like to say, what the human species needs to get done by 2030. In January, B Lab joined forces with the UN Global Compact to launch a solution to help your company do its part. It's called the SDG Action Manager. As a B Corp, you can pull answers from your B Impact Assessment automatically into the SDG Action Manager for questions that are the same in both tools. So for the climate action module, which will be particularly valuable on your journey to net zero, you'll see that about 40% of that module's answers, depending on what type of business we're talking about, will be pre-filled. You can load the SDG Action Manager on your B Impact Assessments dashboard, so make sure you are logged into your B Corp account on the BIA. And to get started, you will be prompted to engage with a baseline module that is very much inspired in the UN Global Compact's 10 principles, which really touch on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, because it's important that we think about these issues based on how they connect with other really essential issues like equity. Roughly 40% of that baseline module will be pre-filled with your BIA information as well. The SDG Action Manager is really a great way for you to manage your progress on your net zero journey, while also connecting that to a tool you're already using as a B Corp, the B Impact Assessment. And it is very aligned with our approach to climate action, to advocacy, and justice. We are really excited for you to make the most of it. And, we hope it helps. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Kaya Axelsson from the University of Oxford to share more about our third ambition, which is to partner widely.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Kaya, and I'm a Policy Engagement Fellow at the University of Oxford, where we are working on developing research-based resources for net zero committers. In particular, we're developing a net zero tool aggregator to bring together the wide range of tools that are publicly available in the market, often in different and fragmented places, and often without an explainer on how to use them. And this platform will help businesses set a net zero target and then support them with what it takes to make this commitment a reality, as Dan mentioned. We've been working with members of the B-Lab Climate Task Force, as well as other business organizations, including the International Chamber of Commerce, Mission 2020, Chapter Zero, and many others in our community to refine and develop this project and to collect the many tools, reports, and case studies like all of yours that already exist to bring together businesses into a one-stop shop of vetted resources for achieving net zero. For example, we'll be profiling the B Impact Assessment, the SDG Action Manager, the Climate Emergency Playbook, launched last year at COP25, as well as a range of materials you'll be gathering through the Climate Collective. So thank you so much for that and any contribution you might make in the future. We're committed to offering a free resource and working collaboratively with others. For example, you may have heard we are co-developing our tools with those leading the recently launched SME Climate Hub that was announced this week at the UNGA. We want to make sure that all of the hard work you're doing, the tools you're using and creating can be shared as widely as possible. This will help your impact extend far beyond the B Corp community and really move those that are following the B Corp way into action. Our plan is to soft launch in early spring and then have a fully functional site ready for all of you well before COP26. But in the meantime, we need your feedback to develop the best possible tool and resource. If you'd like to join us as an early tester of this tool and access all of the resources it will contain, please get in touch with me. I would so love to hear from you, as I have many of your B Corp colleagues. In the meantime, thank you so much for giving me a warm B Corp welcome. And now I am very pleased to introduce Daniel Turan from the B-Lab Europe.
Thank you, Kaya. And is anybody ready for action? I definitely am. So a lot of word, a lot of listening, but now action is needed. And as you know, at B Corp, we do not have meetings, we have parties. So we've organized these global action parties to make sure that the action takes place. So who should we collaborate with? What's a cool institution to collaborate with? TEDx. So TEDx Countdown and B Corp and the Climate Collective are going to move forward and offer you a number of opportunities around the world. I'm posting right now in the chat the ones that are already confirmed. So it'll be one in the US, one in Australia, one in Europe, and one in the UK, and more to come. And at each one of these action parties, what's going to happen is we heard from you, and from the example that Kate gave, just so much is happening. We also heard it's really tough and people are struggling to get to zero. We have to reach it. It's not easy. So let's come together. Let's join these continental action parties and let's make some magic happen together. That's the only way we can go forward. In these parties, we will connect with these beautiful murals that will accompany across the continents. So the connection will be made not just through local, continental, but global activities. So I amazingly look forward to all of us joining us. And right now I hand over to my colleague, Mindy over in Australia. Join your next action party. See you there.
Thank you, Daniel. I've got my party hat on already for these action parties. Hi all, I'm the head of community building at B-Lab Australia, New Zealand. Not only do I want to see you in October, I would like you to mark your calendars with some important milestones for the next 12 months as we make our way to Glasgow in November 2021, which you can see on the far right. But starting from the left, right after the action parties, we also invite you to, in November, the UNFCCC Race to Zero November Dialogues. These are a series of virtual conversations hosted by COP high-level climate champions, Nigel Topping and the wonderful Gonzalo Muñoz. And these will be on the dates 9th to the 19th of November, on the original dates of COP before it was postponed. And in December, we can anticipate the launch of another wonderful resource, the Climate Justice Playbook for Business, created by B-Lab, Provoke, and the Skoll Center for Social Entrepreneurship. And finally, to close off an unforgettable year, let's be reminded that it will be the 5th anniversary of the landmark Paris Agreement, which underpins so much of our work today. And so 5 years has passed. Let's double down and take action on our race to zero. But what I'm most looking forward to is the new year in 2021, where we're looking forward to work hard and bring you the B Corp Global Climate Summit. Mark your calendars for April, followed by the working sessions in May. And so once we finalize these dates, you can hear about them in the Beehive under the B Corp Climate Collective channel. So stay in touch with your regional BCCC collective. And we look forward to bringing you more on top of these wonderful things in the next 12 months. And so much to look forward to. And with that, I'll hand over to my colleague, Hannah.
Thanks, Mindy. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Munger, and I'm the Director of Global Communications at B-Lab. Throughout 2020, a line I've heard over and over again, as I'm sure you have, is what a time to be alive. A time of reckoning and resetting, of strained spirits and immense loss, of personal responsibility and collective interdependence. It's also a time of seeing firsthand the power of stories to influence culture, corporate behavior, and public policy. The stories we read, see, and watch affect the decisions we make, the values we prioritize, and the side of history we choose to be on. And the stories that each of us tells, even to ourselves, hold incredible power and potential to inspire and mobilize, and we need to mobilize. On your various platforms, social media, speaking engagements, interviews, email newsletters, blogs, webinars like this one, we need all of you, all of us, to speak out about why your company is taking action and committing to net zero, how you're going to get there, and why we need everyone everywhere to join in this race to zero. This will not only send a message to political leaders around the world or build momentum ahead of COP26, it will be an act of leadership to reset our economic system to one that is inclusive, equitable, and regenerative. At the end of the day, this is bigger than just storytelling. Yes, it's about coming together with a shared narrative and unified call to action, but it's also about taking that action and being the leaders that our future generations need us to be. Thank you, and I'll pass it back to my colleague, Shar.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Wow, what an incredible hour we've had together. I know we are coming up on time, and time really does go by fast. It flies by when we're having fun. But Hannah, one thing you just sort of said that I wanted to sort of raise up and sort of give everyone a time to pause to think about is, what side of history are we going to be on? Like, this is a moment where the decisions we make are going to have an impact. And I want to close out by just sort of sharing, I think for all of us as we move forward, we should be thinking about what our calls to action are coming out of this hour we've had together. I think there's 3 things we would ask everyone who's tuning in to do. Number 1, really importantly, is set your commitment, make your commitment, baseline what your emissions are, set a plan in place, and commit to net zero at least by 2050 and ideally by 2030 or earlier. Second, get excited about the climate collectives and join up. You'll have seen the link, it come through a couple of times in the chat. Go to the website, join us. And if you want to get engaged with a local climate collective, certainly find one in your region. If there isn't one there yet, you can start one and let us know. We'd be happy to help you with that process. And as you heard, we got some action parties coming up. So definitely tune in and find your TEDx Countdown action party that's happening near you and join one of the many global events that will be taking place in October. So those are your 3 calls to action. Make a commitment, climate collective, and get ready for TEDx Countdown. Now is the time where we have one final poll that we'd really like you to spend a couple of seconds just thinking through. And maybe while you're going through it and thinking through what are your next steps going to be in the next couple of weeks, maybe I can turn it over to Kim to formally close us out from this extraordinary hour together.
Thank you so much, Shar, and thanks to all of you, and special thanks to my amazing colleagues on the Climate Task Force. The task force is committed to working with all of you to go as fast and as far as we can, to lift up your leadership and to do everything we can to achieve the inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system for all people on the planet that we know, that all of us know is possible. As leaders and as B Corps, you've been preparing for this moment in history for many years, many of you for decades. You are ready. We are ready. Many of you have already made powerful commitments and are far along on this journey to a zero carbon future, and others are just beginning. All are needed, all are welcome. You're the business pace setters for climate action and the race to zero. Thank you again to our incredible featured speakers. Thank you for being the beacons of hope that you are and for carving out time to be with us today. Saddle up, climate warriors. Let's get to zero.